Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of the Karat Juice podcast. I am your host, Monte Lee, here to drop some knowledge, drop some jewels. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and take a sip. So, a little housekeeping before we get started. I had someone tell me the other day, Karat Juice, what does that mean? What is that about? So, let me tell you. Karat Juice was actually going to be the name of the first book that I write. And eventually I am going to write a book. I'm not sure if I'm going to entitle it that, but my thought process behind it was, when you've read a book or you've picked up a book before, how sometimes when you look at the title of the book, you can tell everything about the book right off its face. Like, for instance, how to become better at sign language or something of that nature. Like, the book title tells you everything. That's exactly the opposite of what I wanted my book to be about and what I wanted it to say. So as a result of that, I decided to make sure that my book had a little bit more nuance than that. So that's why I ended up going with Karat Juice, and carrot meaning a gem, like a gem of knowledge. Like, because hopefully during these conversations that we are having, I'm providing some type of value, some type of knowledge to your life. And juice, when I thought of it in that aspect, I thought about, like, if somebody has the juice, they have something to offer that you can vibe with, that you could take, and that can nourish you. So when I was thinking of Karat Juice, knowledge that you can get value from, that you can sip in bite-sized portions, and hopefully it can nourish you so you can go on, thrive, and move forward. So that's kind of what I was thinking with the Karat Juice, and that's how I came up with the idea of it. All right, so in today's episode, and before we get started, make sure, if you haven't done so already, subscribe, give me a review if you haven't already on Apple Podcasts. It'll really help. And then share the podcast. If you know someone that you think would enjoy this content, please help me by, sharing it and getting the word out there. All right. So in today's episode, a disclaimer. We're going to be talking about the documentary that came out on Netflix recently, Seaspiracy. I am going to be giving my reaction, my thoughts on the documentary. So, if you haven't seen the documentary Seaspiracy yet, pause this, go to Netflix and watch it, and then come back. Spoiler alert, you will not know what I'm talking about if you haven't seen the documentary Seaspiracy on Netflix. All right. So, let's get into it. So, I watched this documentary over a week ago. And I've seen a lot of documentaries like this. I've always been someone that loves to learn. And I feel like when I'm not learning about new things, I can feel stagnant in my life. So a good, type of media that I like to consume to do that is documentaries. I've seen so many different types, from things about wars, things about climate change, things about the ocean, things about, you name it, all different types of food, and how different chefs like to make their different dishes, and like where their styles of cuisine come from. A documentary that I watched, a series that I watched about that I thought was phenomenal, was Chef's Table. But before I digress, I've seen a lot of ocean documentaries. Some of the ones that I remember the most were the Blue. I think they were Project Blue or something like that. And the main character in those was a lady who grew up diving, and she's like pretty much spent her whole life talking about the ocean and what it has meant to her over the years. And one thing that I found out about with these documentaries is they haven't been getting to the deeper picture of what is really going on in our oceans. That's one thing that this documentary made completely clear. I don't have her name right now, but anyway, she's the elderly woman that's talking in this most recent episode. I'm gonna look it up here while I got Blue Ocean. All right, I think I can find it. Let's see here. Oh, that's Blue Planet. That's not right. Was it Blue Planet? It might have been. Okay. So in this documentary, I thought the thing that was phenomenal was how it seems like the director didn't pull any punches. I mean, he was going into very, trying situations to get this information, and I really respected that. Like anytime when I'm watching a documentary and it seems like the information that I'm getting in the documentary is stuff that I shouldn't know, that's how you know you've got something good. And the whole time that I was listening and watching this, that's how it made me feel. So shouts out to the director, Ali Tabrizi, for taking the risk to go to places where people are literally followed, literally tailed, and tracked to get this information out. Like I thought it was interesting when he was in like Japan at the different shops and in Thailand and places like that, and he was going and he was filming how people were coming up to him and telling him to shut off the cameras and you can't film here, and being very tense about it. And nobody does that or acts that way if they know they're not doing something right. And he was in some, it appeared, unless he was a really good actor, it appeared that he was in some tense situations where his safety was on the line at sometimes. And I mean, I can respect that. And let's get into some more in-depth information regarding, what was talked about in here. So first off, one of the things that I thought was very, very, well done in this documentary was when they talked about all the different conservation efforts that all the previous documentaries for the most part have talked about. Those being recycling, because we know about how plastic affects the ocean and how it swirls around in the different currents that flow. I don't know the exact, scientific way to say it, but there's these paths, these currents that the sea turtles fly through. And you see Finding Nemo, the turtle was floating in like these like pretty much highways in the ocean, where eventually all the trash that gets dumped into the ocean, which is what I thought an alarming amount, like a lot. There is a lot of trash that gets dumped into the ocean, but it was going to these places in the ocean where eventually it would just be like almost islands of trash. I've seen things like that in the previous documentaries, and I thought it was going to be alluding to that when I saw this. I'm like, I thought it was going to be, here we go again. I've seen this pony dog and pony show before. What else do you have for me? So it talked about that and how that is an issue. It also talked about how there's been a lot of press and marketing and so forth about straws and the effect that the straws have on the environment and what that means. I know we've all seen the videos, the social media posts, what have you, of the turtle who was on, I believe, a small boat, and he had a straw stuck in his nostril, and the people on the boat are taking some pliers and trying to, pull at this straw to get it out of the turtle's nostril. It's a very graphic video, but it kind of seared in my mind, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people, the effects that straws have on the ocean, right? Like, it's cool. I don't need a straw. Give me a sippy. Like, I've thought doing my part, but hey, I don't, no straw for me. I'll just take, I go to Starbucks or whatever. I'll just take the little sippy cup thing. No straw. I'm doing my part, right? This Seaspiracy gave me cause to pause and to really peel back the onion to what is actually going on. And what I realize now is not drinking out of that straw really ain't doing much. That's like the bare minimum. There was a graphic in this documentary where it talked about the actual trash that's coming from, straws, waste, trash, everything that is in the planet that we thought was such a big factor is only like contributing to like 0.003% or something like that of the actual pollution that is hindering and really causing the ocean to, die in a sense. And I kind of twisted my head at that, and I was like, really? Are you sure? Is that accurate? Yes. After watching this, yes. Who knew that the biggest culprit during this ordeal is not the trash, is not the straws, it's actually fishing. And when I say fishing, I don't mean the guys who are on the canoe in a village going to fish for the village. You see, because back in the day, I think things have gotten misconstrued. Back in the day, when people used to fish for a village, no matter how great a fisherman that they were, okay, they might catch, 50 to 100 fish, maybe even more, but they're not catching them by the thousands. And the fish that they do catch, they are going to be used. There's not going to be any thrown away, thrown out, or there's not going to be any fish that are caught in a huge net and killed, because if their nets aren't out there that long, they're literally catching them in canoes and kayaks or whatever. So, or dugout canoes. Yeah. So, in those times when it's the hunter gatherer bringing it back for the village, that's how sustainable fishing originally was meant to be. And there's no waste to those fish. I've watched plenty of, documentaries where it's talking about, tribes and indigenous people and everything. They use everything on that fish from the rooter to the tutor. They're cutting the head and making a stew out of the head. They're using the fillets. They're some of the fish that they're aging and like letting it sit out and like salt baking it. Other ones they're letting it dry out and dehydrate and they'll put it in other kind of recipes. Long story short, they are utilizing every portion of that fish, and I believe that's the way that it's supposed to be. I believe in this day and age that we're living in currently, we are so wealthy in first world countries that we are living in this age of abundance where people used to have a whole fish for special occasions back in the day. Special occasions you would have a whole fish. Other times you might have a piece of fillet, okay? And then you would use that fillet and put it in like a soup to feed the whole family. Everybody's not getting a full fillet like how things are going today. So what's starting to happen is we have overpopulated. There's more of us, and we're bigger now. We eat more. We eat to excess. Supersize me in the fifth. And although all of those things are happening and we've became more wealthy and eat more, the ocean has not changed. The ocean still has it's a finite resource. And I'm not saying people should stop eating fish. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying we can learn something from our forefathers and ancestors to where, can we eat in moderation? Do you have to have an entire fillet every, couple of days or whatever? I don't even eat fish that often. I don't cook it at home because I don't want the house to stink. But fish is something that I eat maybe once or twice a month. And that's usually something I'll order, like if I go out to eat. First of all, because I believe they could prepare it better. And I just believe a healthy diet is something that's in moderation, not eating anything to excess. And I eat all different types of meats. I am a carnivore. I eat vegetables too. Don't kill me, vegetarians. But I do think that there is something to be said for having some restraint and moderation in our diets, having a balanced diet. And what a balanced diet means is we're not eating 80% meat and 20% legumes, potatoes, and veggies. I think a real balanced diet would probably be more like 60-40. 60% of your meals should be potatoes, rice, vegetables, bread. And then 40% of the portion of the meal should be your protein, whether you're somebody that's going to be eating tofu or fish or steak or chicken. I believe we've gotten misconstrued in this culture where there's almost an addiction to how something looks and the savory meats and all of these different things. And I am a foodie, but we are, as Americans at least, one of the biggest countries in the world when it comes to our actual size. And I think it has something to do with this culture of eating in abundance. So I think that's something that we can put in check. Moving on, I want to get to also, before we get there, we'll take a slight break here for a message from the sponsor, and we'll get back to it. Thank you for listening to the Karat Juice podcast, and I want to let you know about one of our sponsors, Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me tell you a little bit about it. First of all, it's free. You know I'm always about a deal, so that's a big plus right there. There are also creation tools in the app and in the software that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's literally everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay. I also wanted to get into some of the things that I really found significant in this film. First of all, it was when they began talking about just the sheer scale of the commercial fishing operations that have been going on, where they're casting these nets that goes for miles and miles, and the ships that are um, pulling and gathering all this fish are like small tankers, and it's just for miles and miles of fish. And then uh, during the episode, when he went onto the boat of some of these illegal people that were doing this illegal fishing, when they were fishing in areas where they weren't supposed to, and going and looking, and then he pulled the hatch of like their cargo, and it's just filled to the brim with fish, just like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of fish. And I'm thinking, okay, how many other fish did they catch while doing this that weren't supposed to be caught? Like, the thing that's happening with the dolphins during this situation is nuts. I had no idea that when somebody's trying to catch salmon or tuna or something, how many dolphins and other animals get caught in the, the bycatch is what they call it, the runoff, the, casualty of collecting the fish. Hundreds of dolphins, and they get killed and tossed over. Like, I just couldn't believe that. This was so shocking. And I probably should have gave you this disclaimer earlier. Do not eat and watch this thing. Do not eat before or after for a while watching this thing. It's that jarring. Some of the situations and the times during this episode or whatever, when they were cutting the fins off of those sharks and just tossing them back into the ocean, oh my goodness. It was just tragic. I mean, we just got to do better as a society, that you would just cut the fin off the top of an animal and toss it back in there. And then they showed them in the ocean, and they were still trying to like squirm and swim, but they couldn't move or whatever because their fin was cut off. If you're going to cut off the fin of an animal, you might as well um, continue. You know what I'm saying? You might as well eat that fish. Don't just let it die. That's just cruel. So I was just taken aback by the just disregard for life in some of these instances. And a lot of it has to do with, believe it or not, money. Follow the money. With the shark fin soup, I've never had it, but they also talked about how it doesn't even have flavor. Literally, in the cultures where this is being eaten, a lot of it's over in like Japan and Thailand and Hong Kong or whatever. That's where it's prevalent the most. And it doesn't even have a flavor. It's more a status thing. Like, if you can afford to get the shark fin soup or whatever, it's like a badge of honor and a status symbol. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, bags upon bags, thousands upon thousands of shark fins were shown in these various shops and cargo holds and what have you. And follow the money with any industry. And meanwhile, the shark populations are just declining and declining and declining. And I will say this about the film as well. I thought it did a great job of giving statistics as well as diagrams and not diagrams and like graphs for me to be able to visually picture the magnitude of what has actually happened, like in regards to the sharks, how their populations have been declining so much. And then it also parried that over to like what's been going on with the very expensive tunas. I believe it was the yellowfin tunas, with how it's been a boom in their value because of the sushi, renaissance, and how popular that has gotten. I think it says something about how like a grade, like the highest grade of this specific type of tuna could sell for as much as $3 million on the open market. A fish selling for as much as $3 million on the market. Are you French toast insane? How much are those sushi rolls? What? Who is eating that? A fish? I mean, people will pay top dollar for almost anything. You cannot make this stuff up. So I was literally shocked, appalled, and this film needs to be heard. It needs to be out there. Politicians, all countries, the United Nations need to be put on notice that the practices as depicted in this documentary are not okay, and these things need to be addressed, because at the rate that the fish are being plucked out of the ocean currently, it is not sustainable. Clearly not. Also another thing, the dolphin safe labels. You guys remember when they were talking to the various, spokespeople and people representing this dolphin safe label, corporation, and how they regulate the dolphin, safe, and how on a lot of these boats, they don't even have people observing if that is actually happening. And the people who are observing and that actually report something, doing their job like they're supposed to, either get, harassed or even in some cases killed. My jaw dropped to the floor. I said, what? The people who are supposed to be there regulating this thing actually say what is going on? And it talked about that story of the one lady who reported that something the right way, like the way she was supposed to, and apparently some illegal fisherman or whatever went and out of vengeance to her cabin or whatever and shot her and her family, husband and kids. I believe that's what it said in the documentary. Are you insane? Just about doing your job? So I can't blame some people who are in that position. I wouldn't want to be an observer, risk my life to do my job in regards to regulating. Are you serious? It seems like we're talking about not fish. Like we're talking about some kind of like narcotics or something. But I don't know any narcotics where one prize, one catch, one fish can be worth as much as $3 million. So they don't care what the cargo is. It's the money attached to it. And that is insane. It's just unreal. I can barely even speak right now. So before we move over to the last thoughts that I've had in the conclusion, I'll give you another sponsor message right here, and then we'll be back. Okay, another thing that I wanted to get into about this program was the various practices that they had been using to fish. And the one that was very um, crazy to me was the troweling that they talked about. And then this was another instance where they actually visualized what is actually happened so I could understand it. And that really made it hit home for me. They talked about the troweling. First of all, they prefaced it by talking about marine life and how the coral reefs, the different vegetations and plants in the ocean play a vital role in the ecosystem because it allows um, it's collecting CO2. I believe that's what it says. So it's helping to uh, for the planet to become less polluted. It's cleaning. It's like a filtration and cleaning system for the ocean. That's the way I understood it. And what this troweling does, it's not a net that's when I think of nets, I think that they're over top in the middle of the water or over top of it. This troweling practice, I just realized, it's where they drag a huge net on the bottom of the ocean floor. And when I say huge, they stated that these nets can be as big as um, 13 jets, wide and mass wise. 13 jets could fit in this net that they're dragging on the bottom of the ocean floor. And while they're doing that, they're dragging it on the bottom of the ocean floor and it has some weight to it. And it's just scraping off all the vegetation that will be on the bottom of the ocean floor there. That's why you see so many areas now where the vegetation, the corals are dying in certain areas of the ocean because a lot of the fish are not there anymore. And the fish help to clean and, they interact with these plants and it's like a vice versa thing where they keep them alive. But then they're just being scraped off of their roots and there's barren, pretty much deserts in the ocean now where the vegetation would be. So it's pretty much um, getting the entire ecosystem out of whack. And that's not what we want. So when I first heard that, I was just like, goodness gracious, is there anything we can do? Like, there's no way that the people who are running these ships or whatever could think that's a good idea. To be just dragging a huge net the size of 13 football fields or whatever against the ocean floor. But, money, 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 right? It's just, it is disheartening. And I know that people need food, but I don't think we need that much fish. If we could just make a concerted effort to eat things in moderation, we can make a difference in this world. And I truly believe that. Um, one more thought, and then I want to wrap this up. Towards the end there of this documentary, it talked about a place that's doing the whaling and they're actually doing it legally and they're waiting their turn to do it. I wanted to say it was a place. Um, was it in like Norway? I believe it was in Norway. It was towards the end of the film. And when I tell you, they went out on their boats out there in Norway. They funneled these smaller whales, these whales, they kind of look like dolphins a little bit. They funneled them towards the coastline. And when they funneled enough of them towards the coastline, I mean, it had to be like over 100 of these whales. They got them towards the coast, and then they just slaughtered these whales. I could not believe my eyes. It was just a sea of red. It was something from a horror movie. I couldn't believe that this was happening every day. Fish are different, but whales? I didn't know that we were still whaling nowadays. And I know that I thought there's some obscure, industry where people are still whaling, of course, but to see it, to actually see it on screen was just gut wrenching, man. And I don't think people realize like dolphins and whales are mammals. Like they are very smart and intuitive, and they can learn and they can communicate, and they can form bonds with other species, and of course their own. So just to see that hurts. It really did. It really did. So if you watched the documentary and it affected you as well, make sure you share it with people. If you want to go vegan, do it. If you want to go vegetarian, do it. I am going to make a concerted effort to consume things in moderation. I believe if we cut back our intake, it could only help us as a society because, first of all, a lot of us are eating to excess, so it's going to help you as far as with your caloric intake. You can shape up a little bit, lose some weight, and you also can help the environment. Okay? We just have to do better. The cloak has been lifted off a lot of our eyes, at least now, because you've seen the documentary that I've been talking about in this episode. And at this point, it's like, take action. What do you want to do from here? So, this was just supposed to be my reactions to the documentary, some things that I thought were interesting. Oh, and the answer is not the farm raised fish for obvious reasons. I know you guys saw that part. Yuck. The part when they showed the lice with the salmon. I know that's not in all situations, but I've heard for a long time the farm raised fish is not that deal. If I'm going to get fish or something like that, I usually go wild caught. And when the filmmaker, Ali is his name, when he went to that farm and then they showed that pit of just the dead salmon, oh my God. I could just imagine the smell now. Goodness Lord. Mm. So, my solution, because I don't want to talk all this crap without a solution, my solution is eat in moderation, be aware of where the food you're purchasing is coming from, and just share this and speak to people that you know about the film and how the fishing industry is affecting the ocean. And then from there, hopefully, we can move a conversation forward where there's things being done in legislation and policy that are going to cut some of these loopholes where these actors are still damaging the ecosystem which is the ocean, because I thought it was jarring where it showed that if we continue at this rate that we're at right now, our oceans will be pretty much empty by 2048. That's in our lifetime. So we are the stewards of the world that we have right now, and it's our voices, our action, and what we do moving forward that's going to change that. So that's been this week's episode. I hope you've gotten some value out of it. Like I said before, if you enjoy the content, go ahead, subscribe, give me some feedback, a review would be nice. And then I will talk to you guys next week. Make sure that you are constantly trying to grow. And I'm trying to do my best to get better each and every day. So make sure that you love somebody, you hug somebody, you do something good for somebody without expecting anything in return. And I will speak to you guys next week. Peace.